One thing about KB is that he connected with pretty much everybody in LA, especially the Latino community as well. He had an affinity for them. And like you said, I met the kid when he was 17 years old at the NBA rookie transitional period thing that they were doing in Orlando. And I happened to be on the panel or the team that had Kobe in my group. So for the whole week, Rodney, this kid called me Mr. Scott. I was like, Kobe, we got to do this and do this today. Okay, Mr. Scott. I said, man, look, first of all, quit calling me Mr. Scott. We're going to be teammates here pretty soon, and he just had a humbleness about him, and you could tell that his upbringing was done right, because he called me Mr. Scott the whole week until we got to training camp. And, I said, look, now we're teammates. You can't do that. But you're right. I saw the maturation of a young man turn into a man, an icon, a legend, but more importantly, a husband, a father. Mm-hmm. And, so I saw 20 years of him growing up and his connection with LA and how the people here loved him. I mean, they truly, you would think he was born here in LA. Right. But, he brought us 5 championships, played for one organization, and he gave his heart and soul to this team and to this organization every single night. And that's something that I admired about him.
You knew him as a teammate, you knew him as a coach, and then you knew him as a competitor.
Yeah.
You knew him as all three.
Yeah.
Let's talk about as a teammate, and you knew him when he was very young.
Right.
What did you see when he was young, and what did you think was going to happen with him?
Fred, I saw a work ethic about this kid, and I've told this story a few times. Gary Vee knows this story pretty well. I would come to the gym if we had 10 o'clock practice. I would get there at about 8:30. At that time, right now, I'm 36. I got to get there early. I got to get my treatment.
Oh, yeah.
I got to get loose and all that stuff. And
warm up before
practice. Got to get the warm up before practice and then the warm up after practice, And I remember one day distinctly we were practicing at the Forum. And I come down the tunnel and I'm walking to the gym or walking to the training area. And of course you got to pass the gym, but I hear this ball bouncing. And I look out there and I don't see anything because it's dark. There's no lights on or anything. So I walk all the way to the floor and Kobe's at the other end shooting.
In the dark?
In the dark.
Uh-huh.
And I stood there for like 2 minutes. And not only shooting, but he was doing moves like it was a game. He was going like 100 miles an hour like it was a game. And I stood there and I watched for a couple of minutes and I just started shaking my head, and I walked back in the locker room. I said, Gary Vee, how long has Showboat been here? He said, well, he'd been here probably about an hour ago. And I said, wait a minute, it's a 10 o'clock practice. I'm here at 8:30, 8:45. This kid been here before 8, out there shooting. And I said, Gary, tell the people to turn the lights on at least,
Right.
At least let him shoot, where some lights on. But I knew then that he had an unbelievable work ethic and that he wanted to be great. And I had many of days where I would sit with him and talk. Here in L.A., we would go to the beach sometimes. We would talk on the bus. We would talk on the bench. And I did a video a long time ago with NBA Entertainment. And I told them, I said, mark my words, this kid is going to be unbelievable. And I just saw it every day. I saw his competitive nature. I saw his work ethic. I saw his determination. And at 18, he had a maturity about him that I hadn't seen in an 18-year-old. Uh-huh. So I knew he was driven and he wanted to be great. And he told me, I said, what do you want to do in this league? What do you want to accomplish? He said, I want to be one of the greatest of all times.
Yeah.
And I looked at him, I said, you will be. I'm just glad you didn't come when Showtime was there. Right. Then I would have come off the bench,
But that's the thing, Byron, and you know this as an athlete. There's always, whether it's the neighborhood growing up, whether it's guys you play with, there's always, there's those guys that have that special talent, right? That you go, oh my God, this cat is gifted.
Yeah.
We're all gifted because we play the game. We play in the league. Absolutely. But then there's ones that are just gifted. But then you got the ones that are gifted and then work at it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And we can all tell the story of that kid in the neighborhood was better than everybody else, but never had the drive or the maturity or whatever, never got there.
Yeah.
And then those guys in the league that had it all, but never worked at it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so we have all those stories, but he had it all. He told, like you said, you're older. He's a young kid coming in. I'm going to be the best in the world.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you can kind of roll your eyes.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay. You know who I played with? I played with these guys. I played against Bird. I played with Magic. I played against Mike. You're like, come on, man. Come on. then, like you said, you see him in the gym in the dark. You're like, okay, first of all, he is talented. He's gifted, and he's willing to work at it.
Yes.
Okay, then he's got a chance.
But the other thing about him, Rodney, is that as talented as he wasn't the most talented player over the in that decade of guys when you talk about Tracy McGrady and Vince Carter and some of these other guys. Yeah. They were more talented.
Right.
But they didn't have the drive and the determination that this kid had. And like I said, from day one, after watching him in practice, and then a couple of months later, now I know him, and I'm sitting there and we're talking, and he's asking all these questions, and I'm looking at him, I'm paying more attention to him in practice. I said, man, this kid is off the chain.
Yeah.
I mean, he has great talent. I mean, and I always tell him, I said, God, just put a little bit more sprinkle dust on you than he did a lot of other people. But then what he also did, he put something inside your chest, inside your heart, that told you had to work harder than everybody in order to be the very best that you could be.
Right. Don't
settle on your talent alone. And he was driven about making sure that nobody outworked him. I mean, nobody. And that's something that he did on a day-to-day basis. Even at 36 years old, 37, when I had him the last couple of years, he would be in the gym, an hour and a half before practice, saying, I got to make 500 jumpers before we even start practice. And it was mind-boggling to me, because at that time, you're already one of the greatest ever.
Yeah, what do you have to prove?
You don't have to prove anything, especially to these young guys. You ain't got to prove nothing to them. You ain't got to prove nothing to me. Who do you have anything to prove? But really, it was to him.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to keep pressing that button on the envelope and making new things that he wants to try to accomplish, new goals. So he kept pressing buttons on himself. He didn't care about what everybody else thought.
Byron Scott is with us in the studio today. When he first got there, and you'd had those conversations, and you observed him shooting in the dark, the one thing you knew, mentally, he was fearless.
Mm-hmm.
But at the beginning, and we'll talk about the chronology of his career, but at the beginning, did he rub some people the wrong way?
I think probably the second, third year of his career, probably. Not the rookie year, not the year I was with him, because he was still very, very willing, and I think he's always been willing to learn. He's always been a sponge. He's always seeked out knowledge. That was the one thing about him. He wanted to be well informed on anything that he wanted to get involved in. Be it basketball, business, whatever the case may be. So he was always trying to get as much knowledge about sports, basketball, history of basketball, whatever it is, as he could. So I didn't think he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. I thought at the beginning of his career and in the middle of his career, people got rubbed the wrong way because of his work ethic and the things that he would say. And he had points. If I'm going to work my butt off this hard in practice and you ain't, why I'm going to give you the ball? Why I'm going to trust you? So he had a lot of respect for guys who busted their butts, every single day, being that they were very talented or not. But if you came to work every single day and you didn't bag down to him, because he would test you. That's the one thing I loved about it. He would test guys in practice.
How would he test them?
Oh, elbowing them, talking to them, telling them they can't guard him. You got this guy out here, and this guy can't hold my jock. But he would talk so much stuff, and he would really just to see how you're going to react to it.
When did that start, Byron? I know you said not so much as a rookie, but what do you think that started?
I think it started probably his third or fourth year.
Yeah.
And some of it I think is that he emulated some of the things that MJ did as well, because MJ was a terror in practice.
Yeah, he's hard on
his teammates.
Yeah.
I don't think Kobe was that hard like that, but he did test you. I even the last 2 years I had him here, I wouldn't allow him to practice much, but there was days where he was like, well, B, let me just scrimmage. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. So, we're going to scrimmage at about this time. Come on back out, get yourself back loose, and I'm going to let you scrimmage. And he would be in the scrimmage talking the whole time to guys, to Nick Young and to Jeremy Lins and Carlos Boozers, and I would sit there sometimes and say, guys, you not going to say nothing back? That would be me. I'm sitting there like, no, I don't care how good. You're not going to talk to me.
Right.
If I was out there on the court that way. We either going to fight or we're going to do something, but you're not going to just talk to me any old type of way. And he would do it to just see which of these guys he could be in that foxhole with. Which of these guys I can trust to have my back when I'm on the court.
It was a test.
It's a test.
Yeah.
And he was always, testing guys in that way to try to find out, which of these guys I can trust and go to battle with.
But there were guys that resented him for that.
Oh, of course. I mean, a lot of guys don't want to be pushed.
Mm-hmm.
Rodney knows this. A lot of guys don't want to be pushed. They don't want to be challenged. They don't want to be criticized. That he didn't care about all that. Because he wanted to find out which guys he could be in that foxhole with. Our Laker team, that Showtime team. One of the things Magic told me when I first got there, he said we had to test you. We had to see if you were a type of guy we can go to war with, and you passed because you didn't back down. You did come to work every day. You took everything that we threw at you, So basically that's all KB was doing with a lot of guys. But in this era, a lot of guys can't take that.
Right.
They can't take that, man. They don't want that type of pressure or that type of, commitment that it takes, to be great, and he was the wrong one for you to be backing down to, because he was going to make sure he held it over you for the rest of your career.
I mean that is great, because there's a whole mentality of a lot, and it's even more now. And I don't know if it's people. It could be the money's different now than it was. So guys, once they come in the league, same thing with all sports, right? You used to have to work to that second contract or that third contract before you were like, okay, I'm good.
Right.
You know what I mean? Well, now they come in as good. They're good right away.
They already got the money.
They already got it. So it's a different mentality. But he felt like he was that throwback to like when you said like the Showtime Lakers, like, okay, I'm gonna test you guys, and I'm gonna be hard on you guys, and I'm gonna show you how to work. And either guys fell in line or they fell off.
Didn't. Yeah, and if you fell off, then he ain't with you. It was simple as that. He had an old school mentality. He really did. He, like I said, he talked to me about, he wished he played in that era. He wished he played in that Showtime era, because the game was so much more physical. It was so much more pure, as basketball goes. And, I could have seen, and there's certain guys in every sport that you could see playing in any era and being successful. He's one of those guys.
You talk about work ethic. You talk about showing up to practice. That was really one of the major issues he had with Shaq.
Yes.
Shaq's lack of work ethic at practice.
Well, he's made it known that, he felt if Shaq had his work ethic, he would have been the greatest of all time. He said it wouldn't have been a question, because Shaq was so dominant. For a big man as big as he was more athletic than any big man his size. He could bring the ball up the court. He could do so many things.
Right.
So, KB felt that if he worked as hard as he did, there's nobody or nothing that could have stopped Shaq from being the greatest of all time. So he kind of did take offense to that. And then obviously, you got two superstars butting heads, because Shaq kind of said to, basically to him that, look, my way has worked pretty well, which it had.
Which to Shaq's defense, I mean, certain guys are not. Everybody's not made the same.
Everybody's not made the same.
So who's to say Shaq would have been Shaq if he took that other approach?
True.
Right.
True.
I mean, maybe Shaq needed to get away from the game to come back and be Shaq. What I mean? I knew a guy. I mean, I played with him, Barry Sanders. I mean, he was a guy. There's certain guys. They're in the film room, like we were talking about. He's studying and this and that. And Barry would sleep 2 minutes before practice. You know what I mean? He wouldn't always know, because he was a reaction guy, right? He was like, I don't want to know too much, because I don't want to take away from my creativity. Once I get on the field, I'm going to react, and I'm going to be better at you in my reaction than your reaction. And he was that kind of guy, where other guys were like, spend 8 hours in the film room and do this and do that. He was not that kind of. Brett Favre was not that guy. He said, give me the play, break down. I'm going to do my own thing.
Right,
and I'm going to be really good at my own thing.
Right.
I don't want to limit myself to that way. So everybody's different. But I get that as a teammate when you're like, man, these guys got all, man,
so you understand, but like we just said, just because Shaq didn't do it that way, it doesn't take away from his greatness.
Right.
He's still a Hall of Famer, one of the best centers that's ever played the game, despite what KB might have thought of him as far as his work ethic.
Yeah.
The guy, when he was ready to play and wanted to play, you could not guard him.
Could not guard him.
Anytime for y'all.
All right, Frank Vogel said that Kobe Bryant was the most feared player of his generation. Okay, if that's the case, and you had to face him.
Yeah.
When you're playing Kobe, what's the game plan? What are you telling your guys to do?
You know what? It was almost like back in the day when MJ was there. Had no weaknesses. So you just saying, listen, let's just try to keep him out the paint. make him shoot jump shots and challenge everyone, and we hope he have a bad night.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really that simple. The one game plan that I came up with, we played here with the Hornets, which was one of my best teams that I had when I had Chris Paul and David West and Chandler and all those guys, and I had Rasul Butler, God rest his soul, who was guarding Kobe.
Mm-hmm.
And Rasul was a very good defender. He's 6'7", so he's long enough to, at least challenge shots and everything. And, first 3 quarters, Kobe was just killing us, but we were winning, and I said to Rasul, because you could see it on his face that, I know we winning, coach, but this dude got 40, and it's going to look like it's all on me. And I said, Rasul, this is the deal. The fourth quarter, we're going to start doubling him. I said, because these 3 quarters, he's been so hot. He's shot it almost every time. Nobody else is really touching the ball. I said, so by the time they touch it, they're going to be so cold. I said, so we're going to take it out of his hands. So don't get discouraged. Just be good. Just be cool. You'll be all right. So the fourth quarter came, and we started doubling with Tyson Chandler, who was 7 feet long, athletic. And Kobe started, making the pass to the guys, and they were missing all kind of shots. So we ended up winning the game. And we went in the locker room, and I said, Cecil, we won the game. He said, yeah, I'm happy about that, Coach, but Kobe had 50. I said, but it ain't all about that. But as a player, I understood exactly where he was coming from.
Oh, yeah. That's like Jalen Rose gets picked on.
Right, the 81, yeah.
He's like, I didn't guard him the whole time.
Right. But you know what? It was hard to try to come up with a game plan against Kobe because he caught the ball in so many different places. He could post you up. He had a mid-range game. He could take you off the dribble. He was at that elbow in the triangle a lot, which is almost a spot that you can't double guys because if you double him, and especially with him, he sees the whole floor, and he can do one dribble and get past the double anyway. So it was almost impossible to formulate a game plan to just say, let's stop him. You just hope that your guys defended, well. And the thing that we tried to do when we played against him is get him to guard on the other end, too. So hopefully them legs would be a little bit tired in that fourth quarter. But he didn't mind that either. I mean, he would take on the challenge of guarding a Chris Paul, which was tough to do back in the day. So we really just said every time we played against the Lakers, and especially with KB, is that, listen, guys, we're not going to double team him. The one guy we are going to double is Shaq. Because we know where he's going to be.
Right.
He's going to be in that paint, and we can get the ball out of his hands if we get a good double. But Kobe, we was like, look, we just hope he doesn't have a good game. That's the whole game plan against him.
We were talking off air, and I've said this on the air many times where people thought Kobe was ball-centric. And I always maintain Kobe was about winning. And his philosophy was, I'm always going to do what I think is best for us to try to win.
Mm-hmm.
And if that means I've got the ball, that's what I'm going to do,
right? Because
I want to win.
Right.
So I don't think it was, and you played with him, you knew him. I don't think it was this arrogance where it's all about me. I simply think it was more, I'm our best chance to win.
Yeah, it was such a misconception about Kobe as far as him being a ball hog and all this other stuff. If you really look deep, like you talked about, it was all about winning with him. He was chasing history. He was chasing his idol, Michael Jordan, who had 6 championship rings, who got criticized early in his career about being a ball hog and all this stuff too. Kobe, mimicked Michael for so many years, so he was chasing, rings. And, like you said, for him, he said, listen, if y'all can't get it done, I will. And that was his mentality. And like I said earlier, when he was asked, does he trust his teammates? He said, yeah, I trust him, but I trust me more, which and that's Kobe Bryant.
Yeah. which Byron adds probably to his frustration with Shaq. As you talked about him chasing Jordan with the 6 rings and saying, if Shaq and I would stay together, if Shaq would have stayed, we got 10. Yeah. Because as you know, Shaq was a problem. It's a problem. You could live with Kobe getting 60 on you, but you didn't want to let you said you had to double the big fella because everything was a dunk.
You had to.
You know what I mean?
Like I said, when I was coaching in New Jersey, we played against the Lakers in the finals. We had nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody that could guard Shaq. And we had some guys that I thought were good enough to try to, just keep a body on him and keep him out the paint. We had Kerry Kittles, who was a very good defender, who could guard Kobe. We had Jason Kidd, who can guard Kobe. Neither one could stop him.
Right.
But they could at least make it hard on him. We had no answer for Shaq. And when he would throw it back out, then he would just get deeper post position. Now when you throw it back in, you couldn't double him. So he was a problem from the start.
Yeah.
And if he wanted to dominate games, he could. It was that simple. So Kobe's frustration is the fact that, look, if we would have stayed together and Shaq would have worked as hard as I worked, instead of, probably like we talked about earlier, Rodney, just accepting the fact that this is Shaq and this is how he does things. If they could have coexisted with each other, understanding who they really are, they could have won 7, 8 championships because nobody could guard them.
Right.